Hello and welcome back to Parenting Uncovered. We are Dave and Ashley Willis, and we are so excited that you are joining us today because we have a very special guest with us, right, sweetie?
Super special guest. And I know we say that every time we have any guest, but today I actually mean it. And no, I always mean it, but I mean it extra today because our dear friend Susan Thomas is here.
That's right.
And Susan and Brandon were actually our pastors for a season when we lived in Keller, Texas. If you guys are in the Keller or Dallas-Fort Worth area, Keystone Church is an amazing church. Go check it out. They're incredible. But in addition to being, along with Brandon, a founder of Keystone Church, Susan is a licensed professional counselor and just has such a gift with counseling, encouragement, perspective, and she has lived out these principles, raising their own 4 amazing children. And so we're going to have her on a series of episodes, and we're super excited to welcome her to the podcast. So
You're welcome, Susan.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. It's a joy.
Well, it's a joy to have you because it makes our job a lot easier because we got this expert here.
Oh,
I don't have to do a whole lot of work. I mean, we got somebody knows so much. Between you two ladies, we are covered.
Oh, well.
Well, I'm just so excited to hear from Susan because her specialty is marriage and family. And I think that our first episode, we were talking about this before we hit record. We were like, what do we want to start out with? And we said discipline. Because I mean, it really a lot of parenting issues comes down to establishing good discipline. And I think so many parents today find themselves at a crossroads where maybe they thought they figured out discipline and then all of a sudden their kid hits a different season and they're like, wait a minute, no, I don't have this figured out. Or they have another child and suddenly they have multiple kids and they're like, what do I do with all these kids? And so I think just talking about discipline and getting to the heart of what's that supposed to look like as a Christian parent? Like, how are we supposed to discipline our kids? I'm really excited for you to speak into this because I know that you work with families on this.
Oh, yes, I do. I have had the privilege to walk with a lot of people in pain. And the reality is we're all people, expert or not, right? We're all people. But I've been thankful for the assignment God has given to me to walk with families, asking those questions of what do I do? How do I parent my children? What do I do when my children are struggling? And what role does discipline have? I mean, a lot of parents maybe came from a background where discipline was done in a very broken way, or maybe it was non-existent. I've had adults tell me, I wish my parents had disciplined me or given me structure. And so there's a wide range of the different attempts that we as people try to do when it comes to children and on parenting and discipline, and just finding that sweet spot of God, what is your design? What is effective? What helps our children, and why do we do it? And so we can hit on all kinds of things today between the three of us.
Oh, yeah.
But,
so much to cover.
It's needed for all of us as parents.
There's a verse in Proverbs, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it really convicts me whenever I read over it. And it says, discipline your children or else you become a willing party to their destruction.
Wow.
Yeah.
And man, that is a challenge for us as parents, that if we choose not to discipline, then we're actually participating in their future destruction. So we have to do the difficult work of stepping in. And discipline doesn't always, mean just one thing. I mean, really, it means coming alongside the child, training them, correcting them, encouraging them, all of those things.
Right.
But, Susan, start with your own experience at home, because that's something that's, obviously you're truly like 100% an expert in your 4 kids. What was it like for you and Brandon trying to get on the same page? Because this was an issue for Ashley and me early on. Ashley's
well, in the early years, I mean, it's just so it's so vivid to me because it was like the issue.
Yeah.
I would say really with our first 3, I feel like it wasn't until number 3 that I feel like we really got a grip on being on the same page with parenting. What was it like for you guys?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny. I think when you start out, this is my oldest, our oldest is 22 years old. And so when that first baby came home, it depends where you're starting as parents, right? And for me, some women, some young girls, teenagers, they would babysit a lot and have all this experience. I can't wait to have a ton of kids. And for me, I think I babysat babysat maybe 3 times. I did not have a clue. Got that baby home from the hospital and thought, what in the world had just happened?
Yeah.
And I think my husband and I both were our heads were spinning and so excited, but full of questions.
Yes.
And so I think from the beginning, early days, what was of great value to Brandon and to me was we are a team. We were a team before these little ones entered into our house. We're a team now. And so from the beginning, even as we were trying to figure it out, we were really committed to, we've got to figure this out together, and we need to be a unified front. And I think different parents and different people coming, again, from different backgrounds, sometimes you have similar expectations for discipline. Yes. I would say ours were probably more similar in that particular arena of marriage. So that was helpful.
Yes.
But sometimes if you have one person who, this is how mine did it, and mine did it completely different, well, there's a whole nother opportunity within the marriage to find that common ground where they can be a unified team.
Yes.
It's crucial in discipline.
Yeah,
I
so
love
good.
how she worded it, another opportunity. Because that is, I mean, Susan, like you hit the nail on the head, because it's not another problem. Like I think that that's how we tend to look at it. And in the beginning, when we were dealing with, because we're not big fighters, like we are more alike than we are different, but we saw our differences come out in parenting. I mean, we were like so different in our approach. And at first we did see it as kind of, or at least I saw it as a little bit of a problem.
No, it was.
But I think it did quickly, thank God, and God in his mercy quickly shifted my mind and heart towards, this is an opportunity, and Dave isn't trying to sabotage, me or my rules. Because just to give kind of listeners and those watching on YouTube a little background to us, when we, we had our first 2 fairly close together, and then we had a little bit of a break, and then our first one is very strong-willed. Our second one is very easygoing, but very hyperactive in the early years. And then our third is even more was even more strong-willed than our first. So we come to this crossroads, and I'm thinking, we got to lay down the law, if we don't lay down the law, these kids are going to rule our house. And so I was much more rules, and very black and white. And Dave was more grace-filled. Yeah. And he's like, what about Jesus? And I'm like, Jesus had rules too.
I wasn't Jesus juking you that much.
You did look at me once, I remember, and you were like, this is an opportunity for grace. And I'm like, all we do is give them grace. It's grace all day long.
Just grace.
So real.
We're raising them to be deadbeats. Now, and a lot of times when I would say grace, really, I wasn't being more Jesus-like. I was honestly being lazy.
I don't know.
I was being lazy because I would just not want to deal with it at the moment. And grace seemed like a really acceptable answer to be lazy. It's like, I can continue watching SportsCenter if I don't deal with this right now. And I needed to be more proactive and I needed to be more intentional. And so, obviously there's a place for grace, but if they don't learn correction, and if they don't feel sometimes the sting of correction, or by, whatever that looks like, then we're setting them up to lose later in life. And I mean, I think a lot of the ails that we see in society all around us now, come from generations of kids who just weren't taught any form of discipline. And then, without any kind of accountability, you go out into the world as an adult and you can cause a lot of damage.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And when it comes to discipline and how you approach it as a couple, your kids are smart. They are brilliant.
Yes. Oh, they are.
They have a plan and a strategy and an agenda to get the thing that they're wanting. Yes. And one of the best strategies for them is when they have 2 parents that are on opposite pages. Oh, yeah. Because they know they can work the system. Mom said no. Okay, give me a second with dad. Or dad said not a chance. I'm going to go hit up mom. I mean, either way, our kids are thinking that way. And so being that unified front is everything. I think another really starting point for parents, for me, when we have 4 kids, so we have 3 girls and 1 boy, we laugh, we say that our son was surrounded and, someone was always crying at our house, often the mother. So, just lots of emotion, lots of a lot of everything. But with these 4 children, I think understanding as a parent, why am I disciplining? Why would I discipline? And this is probably also where just that clinician mindset for me comes into play, of diagnosing a situation. The why is very important. What is happening here? Because I think as parents, when you're in the thick of it, I call it the war zone, you're in it. a lot of times we're just reacting to the behavioral things that are happening. The kid is, having a tantrum at the grocery store, or being disrespectful at a party, or, just hit their brother. I mean, it's a lot of behavioral things as parents that we're managing, and we have to. But starting with a worldview and understanding of why. Because if not careful, we'll begin parenting out of, well, I'll tell you why, because this is embarrassing.
Yes.
Or I'll tell you why, because that is really bugging me, or interrupting my flow right now.
Yes.
And all those things are real in the life of a parent, but God gives us a much greater why. And he has a plan for each of us. And when we understand the why, it really helps us. And the why, you go to Scripture. All of psychology is the attempt to diagnose what's wrong with us. What's the way? How do we get better? That is psychology. Unfortunately, the theory of psychology is coming from people. Well, we have God who created us, who says, well, I actually created you. I can tell you what's wrong with you, and I can tell you the pathway to get better. So I think about children in Ephesians, where he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and father, so that it will go well for you. This is the first commandment with a promise. And so as a parent, for me, it was so overwhelming. I'm like, I have these 4 humans. I'm responsible for them. They're driving me bonkers sometimes, but I love them fiercely. It's so strange, right?
It's so many emotions.
So many emotions. I'm so confused. And so just keeping it simple, simplifying it. That passage really helped me that, okay, one of the elements that God has given us to understand the why is that he is asking our children to obey and to honor parents as their authority. So some of my why is he's wooing them back to himself, because they're born little sinners.
Right? We all are.
Cutie little sinners. Even in the womb, Psalm 52 tells us. I mean, it is a condition. And so wooing them back to Jesus. And when they're little, part of my job is helping them learn to obey and to honor. And those railroad tracks give me direction as to, in each event, how do I help them? Are they obeying right now? Are they honoring? Not about my comfort, but the rest of that passage. So it will go well for you. What parent doesn't want our child for things to go well for them?
Right.
And for them to have a long life that's flourishing.
Yes.
So that's just some of the why behind what we do, because we can get lost in the chaos.
Oh, for sure.
Without a doubt.
I love how you called them like train tracks, and I'm telling you, I think when we simplify it, it's so much better, because when you do have, even just one child, much less, multiple young children, it's so easy to get lost in our emotions. And I was so guilty of that. Like back in those early days, I would just, I really would. I was just of the belief that whenever we would go in someplace publicly, that I was just, if they were staring at us, it was because they were judging us. And I will never forget, I was at Chick-fil-A one day, and it was just me and I think the 2 younger kids. We've got 4, just to remind those watching and listening. We have 4 boys. And at the time, our younger 2, I think the baby was maybe, it was he was a baby. Like he was still, on nursing and taking a bottle. And then the other one was probably, 4 or something like that. And so we were at Chick-fil-A, and I just thought, I want to go into Chick-fil-A, let him play on the playground, the one that is old enough to play, and like have a meal. And for some reason, our youngest Chatham, he was just, he was a pretty easygoing baby. He just lost it and was like that screaming cry, hungry. And I had actually brought a bottle with me, and I could not get the top off of the bottle. And there was this elderly couple next to me, and I noticed they kept staring at me. Like I could literally feel their stares like daggers. And I'm assuming they're like, this young mom doesn't have her kids disciplined. What a mess. She is, botching this whole parenting job. And I'm just, and as I'm thinking this, it's making me more nervous. And then Chandler, who was probably 4 at the time, he starts acting crazy, like, give him his bottle. I want to go play. Why can't I leave the booth? Why can't I, where's the food? All this stuff. And I'm like, please just stop, and I'm trying to get, and I'm like, literally like, why is this top not coming off? And all of a sudden I see this older gentleman get out of his seat to come over to me. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. He's going to tell me, quiet your child, young mother, please, and I'm just like, I don't even know. I can't deal with this right now, and he comes over and he's getting ready to talk, and I turn over to him and I'm thinking, what in the world is this guy going to say? And he just looks at me with the most compassionate eyes and he says, Miss, can I help you with that bottle? And he grabs the bottle and he just pops that top right off. And he said, you have such a beautiful family.
Oh.
And I literally, it was like just such, I really do feel like it was a reminder from the Lord, like, listen, Ashley, calm yourself down. Like,
so sweet.
These days are short.
So
you know,
sweet.
that like the days are long, but the years are short. Like, this is going to fly by. Don't assume everybody's just, you know, like, it's not about me, you know?
Yeah.
And because I think so many times we get so stuck in what are others thinking about me as a mother or us as a couple or us as parents, whatever it is. And that was something, especially in the early years of raising kids, it was really edifying to me. I really had to do a lot of like, you know, denying self. Like, there is that get out of the way. Like, these are gifts from God. Yes, parenting is hard, but you know, it's not even about what others think here. I mean, we're trying to lead their hearts towards Jesus. But I think that day, it was just such a good reminder for me that it's not always, like, first of all, we don't need to worry about what others think, but also it's probably not, like, what we're assuming is probably not true anyway, and it's stressing us out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That fear of man, it is a trap, right? Proverbs 29:25. Fear of people is a dangerous trap. Those who trust the Lord will be kept safe. I think every single parent, we fear something. Whatever it is that we're fearing, it's going to pour out and flow into the way we parent.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I'm fearing people's approval, and we've all been there, oh my goodness. And unlike your story, there have been times when I'm in the store and I feel pretty sure everyone is judging me.
We've been.
Oh, no, we've been.
And it's fair.
We have been the freak show so many times.
That's why I assume this, because it's usually true. But
I mean, I'm like, you know what? There is plenty of material. Just have at it. It's all happening in real time. And so, you know, you just go into those moments. And for me, it was, you know, 4 kids under 6 years old walking into a grocery store thinking, really, this was a great idea.
Yeah.
But in those moments, I find that if we can understand a big part of parenting truly is, as you said, God refining us.
Oh, yeah.
As much as he is developing those kids. Oh my goodness. It's funny. When I was in my single days and God had done a lot of beautiful work in my life and overcoming just victory in my life from a time where I ran from him and meeting my husband and being called into ministry together. And I'm like, wow, you know, I'm in a great place, until I got married and realized, wow, I'm more selfish than I thought I was. Refinement. And then you start getting in the flow, and then you have children. You're like, wow, I am unbelievably, I mean, I need God, because a lot of things are being revealed inside my heart that need refinement. And that's part of who those kids are intended to be in our lives, as much as we're in their lives, to train them up in the way they should go.
Such good perspective.
Yeah.
Hey, before we jump into our end segment, I want to ask a question that maybe a lot of people tuned in just hoping we would get to this kind of specific question. And they're like, I tuned into this episode because it said discipline, and I'm desperate to know some effective age-specific discipline tactics to just get, you know, I've got a 3-year-old that keeps acting out. What do I do? Or I've got a 13-year-old that keeps acting out. What do I do?
Or
and
to
what
spank
works,
or not spank.
Yeah, what works in one season doesn't work in marriage, definitely.
Oh, here we go.
Goodness.
Here we go. I know who I'm with.
I know. Sorry.
I was patting Ashley on the butt not long ago, and Chatham, our
Like in the
8-year-old,
kitchen or whatever.
Yeah, he was in the kitchen, and he said, he was just looking at me weird, and he said, why are you spanking mommy? Do you remember this?
And
I looked at him
'cause she's
without breaking
naughty.
character. I said, because she's naughty.
No.
He looked at me with his mouth
And I
open,
said,
and
he's
I just
teasing
I
Chatham.
just started.
It's amazing.
I said, it's just a love pat, buddy.
A love pat,
But
right.
I did say, because
You
she's
did, and I
naughty.
was like,
and you
remember where you
So-
are and who's around us, honey.
But that's not what this is about.
That's
Tune into the
fantastic.
Naked Marriage Podcast
Very
for more on that. But here on Parenting Uncovered, we want to talk about, what are some things that work? Because again, when a kid's 2, when he's 15, it's going to look drastically different. And what works with one kid won't even work with the
That
next
is
kid
true.
the same
Yeah,
way.
that is
So what have you found are some effective forms of discipline and correction?
Oh, this is a hot topic.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's lots of different beliefs on this. And again, for me, I have to go to the Bible. I have to
Yes.
run to it. And there's many scriptures that talk about discipline. In fact, it says that the Lord disciplines those he loves.
Yes.
So if he's my good father, I want to be a good parent to my children.
Yes.
And because I love them, not because they're inconveniencing me, again, all the other things, but because I love them, I want to be faithful to discipline them God's way. And again, that's where you and your spouse, you want to be a team in that.
Yes.
But in the scriptures, discipline is often, it goes with being uncomfortable. Discipline is not a comfortable experience. And so whatever that looks like, it's important how it is done. But the Bible talks clearly about the rod of discipline.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's even, discussion about what that means. But as I read it, it is a inflicting of physical discomfort.
Yeah. Right.
And the Bible says, we hear spare the rod, spoil the child. That's really not in the Bible. But in the Bible, God talks about the person who refuses the rod of discipline hates their child.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm a mom. I love my child. So Lord, show me how to do that. I'll give you an example of how this played out with my, I don't know. Y'all all may judge me now, but again, I stick by it. But
we spanked.
Yeah.
I was spanked.
Yes.
I was too.
I would have, there's so many more, I would have been out of control if I didn't have some fear of corporal punishment.
Yes,
If I had
me
no
too.
fear of that, it's like the worst you're going to do, send me to my room. Like, I'm
Right.
going
For
to.
some kids that works, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How did it go for you?
It's so true. So we had our first daughter, Ellie, and she was a baby, not even 1 year old. And in that moment with her, God had already begun opening my eyes. This is a little human. She can't talk yet, but I would just look at her and be like, who are you? What are the gifts inside of you? I can't wait to know what you're thinking about right now. And I just saw her as a human on their journey of development. Well, that includes that sin nature from day one. Because often we'll look at that baby and think, oh, they're perfect. They're not going to be bad till later. Well, newsflash, we're all horrible coming out the gates. And God's
we're
so
born
good to
in
make
sin.
us greater.
He is, yeah.
He's so good to make us greater. So she's on the changing table one day. And I remember this. And you go through the checklist as parents. Okay, she's wall-eyed throwing a fit on the changing table. I'm like, is she hungry? No, you just ate. Is she sleepy? Her nap was like a minute ago. Yeah, I check their fingers. Is there a little hair pinching her skin?
Yes.
Is something hurting her? She's fine. And I realize this little cutie pie is so angry that I am changing her diaper.
She just doesn't want you to do
She
it.
did not. So I lift up her chubby little legs and I pop that little bottom, and it didn't hurt her, but it shocked her.
Yeah.
And she, in that moment, stopped crying immediately, and her eyes were wide open. I was like, baby, this is the design,
This is
sister.
for your good.
This
I gotta
is how,
change you.
Yes.
This is for your good.
And it's that process. Children are not able to discipline themselves.
True.
They are not developmentally capable of that. And so that is part of God's gift to a child, to have parents that say, let me help you with this. Before the world disciplines you in a way that can injure you, that will injure you, that could even destroy you. Let me, in the context of love, self-control, the correct why, be God's hands and feet, because God disciplines those he loves, and I love you.
Yeah.
And I want to help
so
you
good.
starting at an early age.
Yeah.
And finding the motivation to, like, as they get older. I know for our boys, the younger ones especially, just taking away a video
Have
game.
your leverage.
Yes.
Find your leverage.
They would rather
Oh.
get 10
If
spankings.
they're past spankings,
than- So, like, they've barely gotten spanked because it doesn't work with them nearly as much as saying, or I mean, they have been spanked, but it's mostly at this point, like, all right, well, you're going to lose video games. And it's, you act like you're throwing them into the lake of fire.
Well, instantly,
like,
they'll straighten up, though.
Yeah.
I will say, kind of in some of the studies that have been done on this, and there's different schools of thought, they think spanking is most effective, up till like 6 years old. For some kids, even up till 10. But it keps on losing its effectiveness as
diminishing
they
returns with
get
age,
older,
for
right?
sure.
And it can be damaging beyond like that 12-year-old or that 10-year-old mark.
Well, and when your kids ask you, will you please spank me instead?
Yeah.
You kind of have an
Right.
idea.
You're like, this
that
is lost.
Yeah.
This is lost
not-
its effectiveness.
Okay, it's time to.
And
move
I
on.
think too, when we spank, and this is something where a lot of us have, a lot of you watching and listening, I know can relate to this. And we hear from people from this dynamic have come from homes where they were spanked in anger.
Yes.
Now, maybe they weren't beaten up. It wasn't like legit child abuse per se, but they were spanked in anger.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that, so many people can relate. And I know that was something I can relate to. And I remember going into disciplining. At first, I wasn't sure if we should spank because I didn't know if I would be able to not react in anger because it's all I knew. And I remember telling you this, and I remember talking real honestly with Dave once we did get on the same page and we were like, okay, this is how we're going to do this. Here's kind of the ground rules for our family. I at first was like, maybe only you will spank because I just don't trust myself. But then Dave was like, sweetie, you can do this. Like the fact that you're even aware of this is a good sign.
Right.
And so what I would do for me personally, because like I said, I'd get really up in my emotions sometimes, is I would take a beat, like before I would spank, if I had to spank. And spanking wasn't my automatic go-to. Right. It never was for us. I mean, we would warn, they would have chances, you know, but not too many, because then it loses its effectiveness. Yeah. But then, you know, because we always say in our house, I don't even know who coined this, but delayed obedience is disobedience, you know, and I still say that till this day. But I remember, you know, you being like, no, you know, you're an authority figure too in their life. Like we're in this together. And I just remember I would be like, go, you know, I want you to go over here for a minute. And I would even say a prayer. And then I would go in the room and I would say, I'm doing this because I love you. Like that, I would use that same language and say, I don't like this. I don't enjoy this at all. In fact, I wish I didn't have to spank you, but because I love you, I have to do this because you know, you knew the rules, you went against it. And it was like not dramatic and it was over. And then they'd want to hug me. Like, and what's so surprising is when we do handle spanking in that non-dramatic way, there's a comfort almost, because they're like, I get it. I get that you love me. I blew it, and you're teaching me, you know, you're teaching me those guardrails. Yeah. And a lot of parents, I know I'm stepping on some toes of younger parents, because there's a lot in this gentle parenting. I'm not knocking gentle parenting. I know that may work for a lot of people, because I think gentle parenting is very against spanking. If I'm not, am I correct on this?
I would say.
And it's very popular. And I think, and I know there's probably maybe some gentle parents out there, and I love the heart behind it. I love the heart behind being gentle. We should be kind and gentle to our kids, obviously, and not just be yelling at them all day and just harsh. But I think that, if we're constantly distracting them, because I think that's one school of thought as well, just distract them. Then you don't have to discipline them. Just get them off the toy that they want, or do this. We're never able to show them what discipline, like what consequences really look like. Right. Because we live in a world where, you know, if you don't show up for work, you're not going to have a job. Right. If you don't follow the driving, you know, the rules of the road, you're going to get in an accident. You're going to get a ticket, you know? And so what would you say to parents like that? Because that is a very popular, and again, you're the parents, you decide, but what would you say on this? Not to put you in a hot.
I do have strong beliefs about this, because I believe that if our goal is, okay, I'm just going to distract them from that behavior or that thing that's triggering them behaving in a wrong way, we're misunderstanding the need of our child. That's a behavioral based approach. It may be a popular approach, but when we understand the true depths and severity of our child's sin struggle, that it is an all-out war for the soul of our child, that it is a true battle that will take out our child apart from Jesus in their life, we see our whole role differently. And we're like warrior, people in the home, not against our child, but against the enemy that would want to have our child. And we love them so much that we understand there's deep needs of their heart. And discipline is just one of the many ways God helps us address the deep need of their heart. And when you think about disciplining, yes, there's that element of spanking God's way, which I believe, as you said, Lord, get the anger out. Let the Holy Spirit fruit of self-control be in. Let my motive be right. And let me do it the way that God would be your way. But also any of the privileges, the groundings, taking away that thing that they love, or their phone, or whatever it is that, the sleepover, all of those are different effective ways depending on the child's age, or that toy. We're going to have some timeout time. But what I would suggest for parents is mean what you say and say what you mean. Yes, if you give idle threats, your children will quickly learn, oh, he's just saying that. But if I wear him down enough with my mom, dad, dad, if I can wear them, if I can wear them down enough. I mean, seriously, it's like psychological warfare in your home, and they are experts.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it is not for the faint of heart.
Parents are so tough. I mean, yes, but we're in this together. That's why we're doing this podcast. We've got Susan back for more episodes. Yes. So guys, she is a fount of wisdom and knowledge. We're going to give her the last word here in just a minute before we, after we do our dad joke and fascinating fact. For those of you who are offended by spanking, we're going to put Susan's cell phone number and home address in the show notes. You can stop by and tell her exactly, I'm just kidding. But, my goodness. But we will give you, they're going to want to know where they can learn more about your ministry and all the wisdom that you share. And again, their church and her ministry is something you're going to want to look into. because they're awesome. Sweetie, before we close out this episode, what's the fascinating fact you have for us?
Why don't you go ahead? Because I'm still trying to decide. So you go ahead with your dad joke.
Well, I always have to try to decide too
There's
between
so
all the
many.
dad jokes. Okay. Which is more expensive, swimming with dolphins or swimming with sharks?
I don't know. Which one?
I feel like
Well, swimming with dolphins is expensive, but swimming with sharks costs you an arm and a leg.
Oh my God.
hurts me. It hurts.
Wow. But love it.
They're all that dumb. That's
Ooh, I
That's-
like it.
Yes, there's
Keep
there's
'em
more
coming.
where that came from,
Keep them
guys.
coming.
All right. So today's fascinating fact when it comes to parenting, I'm getting it from SmithsonianMag.com. And it's an article all about fascinating facts of parenting. And this says pregnancy might actually be contagious. Analysis of the pregnancy timing of more than 30,000 German women found that pregnancy spreads in workplaces. In the year after a colleague had a baby, there was an uptick in first pregnancies in the same office. And families are contagious too. A Norwegian study of more than 110,000 sibling pairs shows that siblings have a relatively strong influence on each other when it comes to first pregnancies. And I will tell you, we have our third child because we were influenced by friends.
well, I do think that was
and
a
then
factor.
we've influenced others.
And then
We
we
have.
had a third-
They've
and
told
others.
us.
And then we had our fourth child, and people start.
And then we had somebody tell
So
us we
there
had our
is-
fourth
there is
child because
something-
you guys thought you were like having a fourth child, and we thought that sounds cool.
Power and community.
the Thomases have 4 kids,
We
and they're our
do.
role models. Let's keep
That's
going.
right. That's
you know?
right.
That's amazing.
Well, hey, before we close out this episode, we want to let Susan tell you where you can find out about her ministry, but want to thank you guys for listening and watching. You guys are the best. But Susan, where can folks learn more about what you're doing?
Yes, well, stay tuned with EXO Ministries. That is going to be some exciting things coming up in the new year. And visit us at keystonechurch.com. We would love to have you there. Church is family, and we welcome you to ours. So I'll see you at either places.
It's an amazing church,
It
and
is
we're looking forward
awesome.
to all the ways that you and Brandon are coming in even more to the EXO family. Stay tuned. Big announcements related to that. But you're going to be hearing more from them, and we're super excited about it, guys. So thank you for being here.
you.
And thank you all for listening. Do us a favor and share this episode. I know that it's going to encourage somebody today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.